And so this whole idea that there is an individual part of me, a cultural part of me, and a universal part of me is how do I sort of intellectually understand that? How do I feel that within myself? Like, how do I understand the separation? Like, what is happening? Do you see what I mean? Is my question clear, or should I try one more time?
Yeah, no, no. You understand it only through, well, reflection is all I can say about it.
And my point is, in general, psychoanalysis tends to be so ambiguous, so fluid, right?
Yeah.
That it is so fluid, in fact, that people have had enough qualms about raising questions whether this is even an effective method or not, at least in the West, right? Like
No,
Freud's legacy is no longer celebrated the way I see it. And to me, I'm like, how can that not be? Do you not understand one of the most important contributions to the understanding of the mind? The separation of the mind, at least in the Western world, was given by this man. So what is happening with that? Why is psychoanalysis no longer, glamorized or even neutralized?
Well, I would say is effectiveness as a therapy. If you want to kind of get rid of your symptoms, what you're suffering, and which that's why people come to as a healing thing. It's long term. It costs a lot of money. So, and in fact, getting rid of symptoms, almost any system of therapy, including all shamans, sources, etc. They do it. They do as well, as long as you believe in that. So it's not a very effective psychotherapeutic system, although there have been now kind of studies compared to cognitive behavior that it is more effective long term than in short term. But all those are all contested one. So if you want to kind of get rid of your pain, it is not, because, for instance, it says that, I mean, Freud, that sentence is not a very good one when he says all it wants to do is transform your hysterical misery into common human unhappiness. Now, who does want only common human unhappiness? If that is all what psychoanalysis is offering, is that people want to, and especially in America, positive psychology, etc. You want to be happy. Right. So happiness is not a psychoanalytic aim. Understanding, self-understanding is your aim, not happiness. It can bring happiness, maybe, but it can also bring sadness.
I think around this time, a little later than this time last year, I had been extremely unhappy and I was worried that I might be depressed. So I went and saw a bunch of therapists, and surprisingly enough, it was only the psychoanalyst eventually that worked for me. And the woman in question, the therapist in question, was a Lacanian Freudian psychoanalyst. And I think it was a very different experience altogether. Because part of my job as I walked in, I realized, was to forget that she existed. Part of my job was to think of her as existing as a picture where she's inanimate. So I can then feel comfortable enough to just say. And every time I'd walk out of that setting, 45 minutes of speaking, first of all, never knew where those 45 minutes went. Right? And as soon as I'd walk out, it would feel like the world was no longer the same. It was almost as if pieces in my visual field were moving. Now, I could never ask her, apparently, so a part of the psychoanalyst deal is that I can never be friends with her. But I want to ask you, what is really happening there? What is really happening there? Is there a common explanation for this, or would you have to take it case by case?
No, but the common explanation is that she or he is, the most important part is listening to your empathy, trying to feel what you're feeling, etc. And you are getting that. She or he, I mean, when somebody comes to me, I mean, I say immediately, I have no idea of what is troubling you, who you are. I don't believe in any diagnostic stuff at all. We have both to learn and go on this journey together. And you are the one who really knows. My job is just to enable you to know that. So if there's something which I feel, aha, you have missed it, I will point out, is there any connection? And then you can, so it gives you actually much more autonomy on how and where you want to go. There are no judgments going to be there at all. Uh, so the function is only to uh, be as open as you can, and I'll be there to at least uh, prevent, not prevent, but guard you again, because it's always accompanied by fears also. And you come to any therapist with mixture of hope and fear. So the hope is the one which brings you because you are in pain, but the fears start coming up. What if this is going to, where am I going? So as long as you get that, what is called the therapeutic alliance, as it seems you got with this,
right,
this therapist, that you will be contained. तुमको बिल्कुल मार नहीं कोई डालेगा, is more than enough.
Right. And it was, to me, it was an acquaintance that I made with myself. Right. I never got to know her. I don't even probably remember her name. And I spent a considerable amount of time, but I got to know myself in a very weird way. And what was happening was, there were two interesting things. One, I would say things and I'd be like, did I say that? Where is that coming from? And that's so interesting. And I'd be like, and I think part of this saying something that probably existed in the back of my head that would then begin to restructure my world outside is my explanation. The second thing is, there were still connections that would exist that I would not notice in my blah, 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 blah for 45 minutes, that she'd casually point to be like, oh, by the way, you missed out on that. And I was meeting myself on a whole different level. As far as the fear was concerned, I realized that there were parts of me I was so afraid of confronting. How dare I say that this is what I think about myself? Oh my God. And as I got closer to say that, just saying that transformed my entire relationship with those things. So what is this magic that psychoanalysis understands, that, you know, psychology or like cognitive behavioral therapy would have treated it in a reverse engineered behavior to cognition fashion?
Well, I mean, there is no magic. You have done really all the work. You are ready to go there. All you want is that I will be, so to say, contained. Nothing bad is going to happen to me. And when there's some nudges needed, I would get them. So you've done all this. There is no magic. It is.
I mean, my question is, like, from a therapist standpoint, I understand that there is no magic.
Right.
Prakhar has to do all his work. That I understand. In fact, I respect that, because only I have all the information on me, right?
Absolutely.
Like, how else can somebody, right? But my question is, like, how is it that as soon as I say something, like, I was reading a quote earlier today, somebody sent me, and I think it's a Jungian quote: as long as you let your unconscious be unconscious and not your conscious, you will call your life fate driven, something to that effect. Is that what's happening when I'm saying something? My unconscious is becoming conscious. Like, what is this process that is happening when I'm speaking?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole idea behind is to make the unconscious conscious. Only one knows the unconscious is a huge thing. You are not going to make all the unconscious conscious, but there's a huge sense of discovery and of this kind of feeling of amazement and wonderment of what all I have inside me, which could have been also frightening, embarrassing, shameful, etc. That it is all okay. And in Freudian or any psychoanalysis, that desire, which it cannot be eliminated, which some of the spiritual traditions think it can. Maybe they're right. I don't know, but mine would be: all you can do is to understand it, and not all you can do. That is what you need to do, is to understand, not to eliminate. And that's what is a huge sense of well-being when you are doing that. I'm understanding my desires.
Right. Have you, sir, read Zizek?
I have not. I mean, I've read his articles, etc.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But like what I think he's trying to do from a psychoanalytical framework is bring to the conscious what you might call as cultural unconscious, where he's trying to
Mm-hmm.
right bring out parts. Is that a thing? Can we create, like, can we make the cultural unconscious the cultural conscious? Is that a transmutation that right? Is that possible?
I think that very much so, and that's when we can get back to what you asked about the Indian part of it.
Right.
So when the Indian part is, I mean, when I go and I did go also, I mean, to Western psychoanalyst, that's where my training was. There was often my feeling, he doesn't quite understand me, because that is where my Indian cultural unconscious was coming, and how can he? Because psychoanalysts also grow up in their own cultural part of it.
Right.
So the cultural unconscious is as much a part of the psychoanalyst
Hmm.
as of the client there. And sometimes it is they do not understand that. I mean,
Right.
for me, I remember Beethoven was absolute noise completely. I mean, what is that earlier? Now, of course, I do
Right.
it.
Right.
And he couldn't understand. Uh, I didn't play for him, but I loved Indian classical music, and for him, what is this? So I mean, this is just a small kind of example. There's so many of these of where the cultural part comes in,
Right.
which often is then get missed.
Uh-huh.